The desert was quiet except for the wind blowing hot sand across the empty land. Nothing moved for miles. The planet had been dead for centuries. No cities, no animals. No water, just sand and broken ruins under the burning sun. Commander Rourke walked alone, his boots sinking into the red dust. He wore full armor, scratched and faded from battle. His rifle hung across his back. The war was over. At least, that's what they told him. But his orders had sent him to this place to investigate strange energy signals buried beneath the dunes. He didn't trust orders anymore, not after the last mission. But he followed them because that was all he had left. His unit was gone. His ship barely worked. And the only thing that kept him moving was a small blinking map on his wrist. The map led him to a strange shape sticking out of the sand. At first, it looked like just another piece of wreckage. But as he wiped away the dust, he realized it was something else. A crate. Huge. Sealed. Covered in strange symbols that looked almost like art and blood at the same time. He stepped back. The symbols looked alien, but not the kind they fought in the war. This was older, more ancient. Something different. The box was metal, but it had heat coming from it, like something was alive inside. It shouldn't have been possible. This planet had been dead for 600 years. Rourke raised his rifle and tapped the crate with the barrel. It didn't move, no sound. He knelt and checked the panel, no visible controls. Just a slit in the middle. Just enough to slide a hand in if someone wanted to die early. Then he heard it. A voice, not loud, not clear. A whisper, female, soft, desperate. Please don't open. The voice wasn't in his ears, it was in his mind. Clear as the wind around him. He jumped back, his rifle aimed at the box as if it might explode. He scanned the area. No one in sight. His helmet didn't pick up anything on radar. No heat signatures. No sound waves, nothing that should explain a voice. But it was there. Inside him. Like it had always been waiting. His first instinct was to leave, report the find, call for backup. But there was no backup. He hadn't spoken to command in days. His comms were blocked by the storm. And even if they weren't, he wasn't sure he'd trust them anymore. He circled the crate slowly, keeping his weapon ready. The sand was thick around the base, like the wind had tried to bury it. There were marked scratches on the metal. As if something inside had tried to claw its way out, he touched the surface. It was warm, not hot, not dead, just alive. As if the crate was breathing slowly, like it had a heartbeat. The symbols on the sides shimmered in the sun. And then, the voice again. Please, listen, don't open. He's still watching. This time it chilled him. Not because of the warning, but because the voice had changed. It sounded closer, more human, more afraid. Rourke backed away slowly, his boots crunching in the sand. Something was wrong here. Deeply wrong. He had seen many strange stirring. The war. He had fought monsters with acid blood. Faced machines that thought like gods. Survived planets that burned skin in seconds. But never something that begged him to stay away. The crate didn't move. It didn't shake or growl or pulse. It just sat there, silent, waiting. But he couldn't stop staring. His instincts told him to run. His mind told him to report it. But something in his chest told him to stay, that this was no weapon, no bomb, no trap, it was a prison. And someone inside wanted out. Rourke turned off his helmet mic. He didn't want anyone hearing this if they were still listening. He didn't know what was inside the crate, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Not even close. The desert wind picked up again, covering his boots in fresh sand. He looked up at the sky. The sun was falling fast. Night was coming, and with it, answers he might not survive. He had a choice. Leave the crate buried and walk away forever. Or stay, dig deeper, and find out why a voice had survived on a dead world, just to whisper to him. He took one step closer to the crate and waited. Asterisk. Rourke didn't sleep that night. He stayed near the crate, watching it under the dull glow of his helmet light. The desert turned cold fast, and the silence made the air feel heavy. He wrapped himself in his cloak and kept his rifle across his lap. His eyes never left the crate. There were no more whispers. No sounds. Just that same hum coming from the metal. Soft, constant, like a machine dreaming. Rourke had seen haunted ships before. AI gone mad. Cryopods with lost souls. But this was different. It felt like the crate itself was alive. In the morning, he checked his supplies. 1 canteen of water, 2 energy rations. The comm unit still blinked red. No signal, no chance of contact. He was alone, completely, and yet that voice had found him. He walked in a wide circle around the crate, scanning with his handheld reader. The energy was real. Old tech, alien, no match in any known database. The box gave off a faint pulse, like it had its own heartbeat. But nothing showed up inside. Just static. The voice hadn't returned, but it stayed in his thoughts. Not as sound, but as a feeling. He couldn't shake the image of someone inside, trapped for centuries, begging not to be rescued. The warning had felt more real than anything in his life. He didn't doubt it for a second. He set up a perimeter with motion sensors, small devices left from his recon kit. If anything moved within 20 meters, he'd know. But deep down, he didn't expect movement from outside. He feared what might move from inside. By midday, the wind picked up. Sand blew harder, cutting visibility. Rourke tied his scarf across his face and dug shallow trenches to shield his gear, but the crate stood firm. It didn't shake. It didn't shift. The sand seemed to flow around it like it didn't belong here. He sat close to it again, listening. No voice, no signal, just wind and heat. But his fingers felt the warmth under the surface, like body heat. Like something breathing slowly, waiting for the right moment to open its eyes. His mind drifted to old stories. Warriors locked in stasis. Weapons that could think. Creatures from lost wars sealed away for the safety of all. Maybe this was one of those. Maybe the war hadn't ended the way they thought it had. His scanner beeped once. Then again, a power spike inside the crate. Very low, barely noticeable. But it was there. The crate was doing something. Rourke raised his rifle and stood ready. Nothing happened. No sound. No flash. Just silence and numbers on a screen. He stepped back and placed a small explosive on the side panel. It was standard protocol. If something unknown was found, and it could be a threat, it had to be destroyed. But as he moved to arm the charge, the voice returned. "Don't," it whispered. Soft, scared, not demanding, just begging. He'll know. He's always watching. It felt like ice down his spine. Not fear from the voice, but fear for it. The tone wasn't a threat. It was terror. Rourke pulled back his hand. The detonator blinked, waiting for activation. But he couldn't do it. Something in that voice had gripped him. It wasn't just words. It was pain. Real pain. And if it was real, then maybe someone was truly inside. He disarmed the charge and dropped to one knee. "Who are you?" He asked aloud. "What are you afraid of?" But the crate didn't answer. No whisper, no hum. Only silence and the blowing wind. Night came fast again. The second night. Rourke kept the fire low and his back to the rock wall. He didn't sleep again. He didn't dare. Something had changed in the air. Something was watching, not from far. From near, at midnight, one of the motion sensors pinged. A soft chirp, just once, then silence. Rourke snapped his rifle up and scanned the dark. Nothing moved. But the crate glowed slightly under the moonlight. Not bright. Just enough to be seen. He moved slowly toward it. His shadow long behind him, The whisper didn't return. But now, the crate was warm to the touch again, warmer than before. As if the thing inside was waking up, Rourke rested one hand on the top. His fingers shook. He didn't know what he was about to release, or if he'd survive it. But he knew one thing without doubt: the voice had been real. And it was still afraid. Something inside wanted to live. Something outside didn't want it to, and he was standing right between them. Rourke spent the third day in silence. He didn't try to contact command. He didn't eat much. His focus remained on the crate, on the shifting warmth of the metal, and the memory of the voice. The sensors were still in place, but they hadn't. Beeped again. The desert sun climbed high and hot. His armor baked from the inside. Sweat stung his eyes. But he refused to step away from the crate. He watched it as if it might vanish or change while he blinked. Each hour that passed made the silence more intense. By afternoon, he pulled out his datapad and recorded notes. Not for the command, for himself. If he died here, someone needed to know what he had found. He described the markings on the crate, the power surges and the voice that whispered from within. He paused before typing about the warning. The part where it said someone was watching, it sounded insane when written out. He deleted the line, stared at the screen, and typed it again. Then he left it there. Truth was better than silence. Rourke checked the perimeter. All clear. The desert had returned to stillness. The only sound was wind skipping across the dunes. He squinted toward the horizon, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched. Refused to leave. That night he finally slept. Only for a few hours, but the dreams were sharp and loud. He saw faces he didn't recognize, bright eyes behind glass. Voices calling out from metal cages. Then a tall shadow stepped over them all and silenced everything. He woke up covered in sweat. The crate was still there, untouched, but something was different. He walked toward it and placed his hand flat on the surface. It pulsed once beneath his skin, like a soft knock from the inside. He jumped back and raised his rifle. Still, the crate remained closed. Nothing moved. But the pulse had been real, not imagined. It had rhythm and life. Rourke lowered his weapon slowly. Something inside was aware of him. He scanned the crate again. This time, the reading changed, very faint. A secondary power signature had activated, deep inside. Almost like an internal signal had been triggered by his touch. He opened his toolkit and pulled out a probe. If there was tech inside, he needed to learn what it was. He inserted the probe into a vent on the side and waited. The screen on his pad flickered. Language appeared. Unknown. Symbols danced across the display like fire. He tried to translate. The system couldn't read it. No match in human or alien databases. But one word kept flashing in red across the interface. It didn't translate into English, but it felt like a name or a warning. Suddenly, the voice returned, louder than before. He's near. You're not safe. Leave this place. It came not as a whisper, but as a broken cry. Pain filled every word. Rourke's hand jerked from the panel. The probe snapped with a burst of sparks. He stared at the smoke rising from the broken tool. Then he turned toward the dunes. Nothing there. But the sky above had changed. The stars were gone. Covered. Something massive was now between him and space. He activated his helmet scan. The shape above wasn't natural. It was cloaked, hidden behind artificial clouds. A ship too big to be local. And it hadn't been there the night before. Someone or something had arrived. Rourke dropped to one knee and took cover behind the crate. He aimed his rifle outward. No movement, no lights. Just that giant thing blocking the stars above him. It hovered silently, watching. Then the crate shook for the first time. Not from the outside, from within. A slow thud. Then another. as if someone inside had risen and placed both fists against the wall. The sand around it shifted. The markings on the metal flared, not bright, just enough to glow in the dark. His scanner went dead, his comms went dark. Only the voice remained, now quiet again. "He's found you." Rourke knew he had crossed a line. Whatever this was, it wasn't just an old crate on a forgotten world. It was a message sealed in metal. And something outside had waited a long time for someone to hear it. Now, they both knew he had listened. Rourke stayed still behind the crate, every muscle locked in tension. The wind had died. The sand had stopped moving. Even the usual hum of his suit systems felt distant. The air was heavy, and the silence screamed louder than any noise. He looked up again. The stars were still gone. The shape above had not moved. It floated like a ghost ship, casting no shadow, making no sound. But something inside him knew whatever had arrived was not here to help. He opened his visor slightly to feel the natural air. It was cold now. Much colder than desert nights usually were. The temperature had dropped fast, unnaturally fast. He closed the visor and checked his oxygen levels. Still stable. But his gut told him nothing was right. The crate thudded again. 2 soft knocks, then silence. No voice this time. No whispers. Just a cold silence that pressed on his ears, like pressure from deep underwater. He wanted to speak, but his throat stayed dry. He turned slowly and pressed his hand against the crate. The warmth was gone. Now the metal felt cold and sharp. He blinked and saw frost forming along one edge. It made no sense. Frost in the middle of a sun-scorched desert was impossible. The symbols on the crate flickered. Just once, a short flash like a heartbeat, then dark again. His fingers traced the strange alien lines. They weren't just written. They were carved deep, cut into the crate as if with claws or sharp tools. Then his helmet buzzed. A short wave. Pulse, not from the crate, from the sky. A low signal trying to connect. He switched frequencies, trying to catch it. Static filled his ear. Then a voice not the one from the crate. A mechanical cold voice spoke. "Unit 014R, you are in violation of containment protocol. Step away from the relic." Rourke froze. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't alien either. It had no emotion, just command. Like something not used to being questioned. He didn't respond. He checked his signal log. The source of the voice was above. The large vessel now hovering. Silently over the site had sent it. Not to help, not to warn. To control. He turned off his receiver. He didn't need more voices. What he needed now was a decision. Stay or run. The crate was changing. The sky had changed. And now something that called this a relic wanted it back. He pulled his pack close and dug through the side pouch. There, wrapped in cloth, was the old relic scanner from the war. A prototype, not approved for use. But it could read energy signatures others could not. He turned it on and scanned. The crate. The results came instantly. Life, not mechanical. Not synthetic, organic. Deep inside the crate, something living had survived. No heartbeat detected, but electrical pulses were active. Synaptic reactions. Like a sleeping brain. Rourke stepped back and looked at the sky again. The ship above flickered. Its camouflage shimmered like water. Then for a second, he saw it clearly. Black, massive, covered in spikes. Not human, not friendly. It hovered in total silence. Then the crate spoke again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. A short burst of pure pain. "He found me. He sees through you." Rourke dropped to the ground, clutching his head. The voice had pierced through his helmet. Blood trickled from his nose. The pain faded. The air returned. The stars remained hidden. But the ship above began to descend slowly. No engines, no light. Just pressure and movement as it sank closer to the ground. Rourke backed away from the crate. He didn't want to leave it, but staying meant death. Whatever was coming from that ship, it had one goal. Take the crate, or destroy what was inside it. But deep inside, the part of him that had survived so many wars knew something bigger was happening. This crate wasn't just an object, it was alive. And whoever was inside wasn't the enemy. The enemy was watching. From above, he picked up his gear, reloaded his rifle, and took one final look at the glowing markings on the crate. Then he ran to higher ground to prepare for what came next. Rourke climbed the ridge above the crate, moving fast but carefully. The high ground gave him a better view of the area. He dropped to his stomach and pulled out his binoculars. The ship above was now lower than before. Its shadow fell across the crate and stretched beyond the dunes. He zoomed in and scanned the edges of the ship. Small hatches opened underneath. No landing gear, no weapons showing, but he could see motion inside. Dark figures moved behind the slits. Their forms weren't clear, not human, not robotic. Something in between. He took out his long-range scanner and aimed it toward the vessel. It blinked red, jammed. No signals could get through. Whatever this ship was, it was blocking everything around it. Communication, radar, heat scans. Even time felt slower under its presence. Rourke adjusted his armor's internal systems to silent mode. Power dropped to minimum. Lights turned off. He became a shadow among the rocks. He placed a motion detector behind him and activated the defense spikes on the ridge's edge. Then he waited. Minutes passed. The ship stayed still. The wind stopped again. No sound. No movement. The crate below no longer glowed. Its markings had faded. It sat cold and still in the sand like it had shut itself down. He almost believed it was over. That maybe the thing inside had gone silent for good. Then the ship pulsed. A wave of invisible pressure rippled outward. Sand lifted off the ground and floated. His ears rang. His teeth ached. Then the wave passed. Figures began to descend from the ship, not with ropes or ladders. They floated down silently in perfect formation. 6 of them, tall, covered in black. Armor shaped like bone. Their heads had no helmets. Just smooth skin with glowing red lines where eyes should be. Rourke aimed his rifle but didn't fire. He knew it wouldn't help. He watched as the 6 figures landed around the crate. They moved like they were weightless. Not slow, not fast. Just perfectly smooth. One of them stepped forward and placed its hand on the crate. The symbols flared red for a moment, then turned dark again. The figure tilted its head slightly, then looked up toward Rourke's position. It couldn't see him, but it knew. Another figure knelt beside the crate and pulled out a device. It hovered above the metal surface and let out a low hum. The device projected symbols into the air. Alien words. He couldn't read them, but the tone was clear. This was a scan, a check, a test. Suddenly, the voice returned inside Rourke's helmet. Weaker now, tired. They want me erased, not freed. They lied. I never broke the seal. The voice cracked near the end, like someone running out of air. But it stayed calm, sad, determined. The figure with the device turned to the others and nodded. 2 of them raised their hands. Thin wires extended from their arms. They attached to the crate. The crate began to vibrate, slowly at first, then faster. The markings lit up again, brighter this time. Rourke's instinct screamed. He grabbed the EMP grenade from his belt and rolled it between his fingers. He had one chance to stop whatever this was, but using it now could bring the full force of the ship on top of him. He waited. 1 more minute. 1 more signal. The crate shook violently now. Dust exploded outward. The ground split around it. And then, the voice returned one last time, not as a whisper, as a scream. They lied to you. Don't let them take me. Without thinking, Rourke stood up, pulled the pin, and hurled the MP grenade toward the crate. It hit the sand near the figures and exploded in a flash of blue light. The wave knocked all 6 figures back. The wires snapped. The crate stopped shaking, and the air fell still again. Rourke ducked as a bolt of red energy fired toward his position. The ridge behind him exploded. Heat singed his armor. He rolled down the slope, hit the ground hard, and crawled behind a rock. Now the ship knew exactly where he was. And the war had truly begun. Rourke crawled behind the shattered rocks, heart pounding in his chest. The explosion from the ridge had thrown dust and heat in every direction. His armor was scorched, and his shoulder throbbed from the fall. But he was alive, and that meant the fight wasn't over. He peeked around the edge of the rock. The 6 figures had recovered. They moved without panic, smooth, robotic. Their armor glowed red now. Not bright, but enough to show anger. One of them raised its arm and sent a scanning beam across the dunes. Rourke ducked just in time. The beam passed over the rocks and melted part of the stone surface. He adjusted his rifle and activated the targeting scope. The figures had formed a circle around the crate again, but now they were on full alert. The crate had stopped glowing. No movement, no voice, just silence again. The MP blast had done something. Maybe it had paused the energy inside. Maybe it had protected whatever was trapped. Or maybe it had just made things worse. Rourke knew he had one advantage left: surprise. These things were not used to resistance. He activated his second and last EMP spike and set it for delayed detonation. Then he attached it to a small drone and sent it flying low across the ground. The drone buzzed just above the sand, invisible under the cloak of its field. The figures didn't notice it. The spike beeped once and blinked green. It landed behind one of the attackers and stuck to the back of its leg. 10 seconds. That was all he had. Rourke counted in his head. When the spike detonated, it released a burst of electromagnetic force that knocked 2 of the figures off their feet. The others stumbled but stayed upright. Rourke didn't wait. He sprinted down the ridge, firing as he moved. The plasma bolts hit one target in the chest and sent it flying backward. Another bolt clipped a figure's arm. Sparks burst from the armor, but none of them screamed. None of them bled. He slid behind the crate for cover. The surface was warm. Again, the voice returned, weaker than before. "You chose wrong by helping me. Now you're part of this." Rourke didn't reply. He wasn't sure he had chosen anything. He had only followed what felt right. Blasts hit the sand around him. He rolled to the side and returned fire. One of the figures moved too fast, dodging each shot. It leaped forward and slammed into the crate. The markings on the metal burst with light, then faded. The crate responded. A low hum started from within. A deep, rising tone that echoed like a song. The sand vibrated. The air thickened. Rourke covered his ears, but the sound wasn't physical. It was inside his head. The attackers stopped moving. They turned toward the crate, their bodies rigid. One of them stepped back as if afraid. The hum grew louder. Rourke looked down and saw the panel on the front of the crate sliding open. Just a crack. Just enough to show a faint blue glow from within. A soft mist escaped into the air. The hum stopped. The figures aimed their weapons again, but none of them fired. They hesitated, frozen by something they didn't understand. Then a voice, stronger, this time, spoke from the crate. Not afraid. Not pleading. Calm. "You brought war to my prison, but you also brought a key." Rourke stared at the opening. He didn't understand. But somehow he was the key. One of the attackers rushed forward, but the crate reacted. A blast of blue energy shot outward and sent the figure flying across the desert. The others began to retreat. Fast. They didn't speak. They didn't look back. They just ran. The ship above roared to life. Its silent cloak lifted. Engines glowed. The air burned as it started to ascend. The figures leaped back into the air and were pulled inside like magnets. Rourke dropped to one knee, breathing hard. The battle was over. For now, but everything had changed. The crate was awake. And it was opening. Rourke stayed on one knee, his rifle lowered, eyes locked on the crate. The blue mist that had escaped still lingered in the air. It shimmered softly under the light of the twin moons above. Everything was quiet now. Too quiet. The ship had left. The attackers were gone. Only the crate remained. The panel slid open wider. Cold air spilled out and formed a circle of frost on the ground. Inside the crate, something moved. A figure, thin, tall, wrapped in silver bands that pulsed with faint light. It stepped forward slowly, as if unsure of its own weight. Rourke raised his rifle again, but didn't aim. He waited. His instincts told him this was no enemy, at least not yet. The figure inside looked fragile, but the power radiating from it was unlike anything he had ever seen. Old power, deep power, silent and steady like the stars. As the mist cleared, he saw more clearly. It was a woman. Humanoid in shape, but not fully human. Her skin was pale with glowing lines beneath it. Her hair floated slightly, though there was no wind. Her eyes opened slowly. They were bright silver and filled with calm sadness. She looked at Rourke without speaking. Then she placed one hand over her chest and bowed slightly. It was not a threat. It was a greeting, or maybe a thank you. Rourke lowered his weapon fully and stood up straight. He returned the gesture. Finally she spoke. Her voice was not the same whisper he had heard before. This was strong, clear. It echoed with layers like many voices speaking as one. You broke the chain. I was not meant to wake. But your mind opened the lock. Rourke stepped closer, slowly. What are you? He asked. His voice cracked from dryness, but he kept his tone steady. She looked at the sky for a moment before answering. I was called Keeper once. Then I was called Weapon, then Monster. I don't know what I am now. The words hit him harder than he expected. Not because they were dangerous. Because they were honest. This being had been locked away for centuries. Feared, forgotten, yet she did not rise with anger. Only reflection. She walked to the edge of the crate and stepped out. Her feet touched the sand lightly. Every step left behind frost. She looked around the dead landscape with quiet eyes. This world was once green. I remember its sky. Now it is ash. Rourke followed her gaze. Why did they lock you away? He asked. She didn't answer at first. She walked in a slow circle, then turned back to him. Because I refused to destroy. I was built to end stars. I chose not to obey. The silence that followed was heavy. Rourke didn't know how to respond. He had fought weapons of war before. Machines built for killing, but never one that chose peace. And never one who had paid such a price for it. She sat on the edge of the crate. The glow around her faded slowly. They came for me again, the Watchers. They want to finish what they started, but you stopped them. And now you are part of this story. Rourke knelt in front of her. What happens now? He asked. She looked at him with calm eyes. Now I decide. And I need time to think. Time to remember who I was before they made me into a weapon. He nodded. You're not alone anymore, he said. The words surprised even him. But they were. True. Somewhere in this broken place, he had made a choice without knowing it. And now he would stand by it. The stars returned overhead. The ship that had blocked them was gone. The wind returned slowly. Soft and warm again, the world felt less empty, less dead. Because something ancient had awakened not to destroy, but to feel the world again. Rourke stood beside her, rifle slung across his back, eyes on the horizon. The war might come again. The Watchers might return. But for now, there was peace between a human soldier and a forgotten being of power. And in the quiet desert night, neither of them spoke again. The next morning arrived slowly. The desert light crawled over the dunes, casting long shadows behind the rocks. Rourke stood near the crate, watching the woman as she sat silently in the sand. Her eyes were closed, her face calm. The frost beneath her had melted. He hadn't slept. He didn't want to. Not while she was still waking. Not while danger could return at any moment. His rifle lay at his side, but he had no urge to lift it. The air felt different now, lighter, but something still waited beyond the sky. She opened her eyes as the sun touched her face. The glow in her veins faded with the warmth. She stood slowly and faced him. They will come again, not today. But soon. The Watchers never forgive broken chains. Rourke nodded. Let them come, he said. You're not alone now. She smiled faintly. It was small, but it held more truth than any words. She had been alone for ages, sealed away in metal. Now she had someone who chose to stay. She turned toward the crate and placed her hand on the side. The metal shimmered and shifted. The crate folded inward, collapsing into itself like paper. In its place stood a smooth silver sphere, no larger than a helmet. She picked it up and held it close. This holds the last part of what I was, she said. If they destroy it, I will forget. If I carry it, I will remember. But only what? I choose to remember. Her voice was steady. Her choice had already been made. They walked together across the sand. The battlefield was quiet. No smoke, no fire. Just the scattered marks left by the earlier fight. The wind erased them slowly, one grain of dust at a time. The desert was healing. At the top of the ridge, they paused. The sky was clear now. The stars above were bright again. She looked up and pointed to a cluster of lights. That system was once my home. They burned it to silence me. Now it is ash. Rourke looked at the same stars. He had fought in too many systems to count. He had lost more than he could remember. But this was different. This wasn't just another battle. This was the start of something larger. She turned toward him. I need to leave this planet. But I don't know where to go yet. I need a path that doesn't lead to war. Rourke didn't answer right away. He stared at the horizon. Then he pointed west. There's an old outpost buried under the cliffs. He said, it's dead. No one's used it in years. But it has power, a working terminal. You can connect to the stars from there. She nodded once. That was all she needed. They started walking again. Each step was quiet. The desert gave way without resistance. The sun rose higher. The past burned behind them. The future waited ahead. Not promised, but possible. When they reached the outpost hours later, the door still worked. Dust fell as it slid open. Inside, the lights blinked to life slowly. Broken screens flickered. Old walls hummed with buried circuits. The air was stale but breathable. She placed the silver sphere on the main terminal. The screen glowed bright blue. Lines of data poured across the interface. Her eyes followed the motion. Then she placed her hand flat on the panel and whispered one word. Awaken. The outpost vibrated gently. Energy filled the room. Ancient connections reactivated. Somewhere far away, something received her signal. Rourke felt it in his bones. A message had been sent. Not a warning, not a threat. A beginning. She turned to him. You saved me, she said. Not with weapons, not with orders. With choice. Rourke didn't speak. He simply nodded. That was all he could offer, and all she needed. The silver light faded. The room calmed. She stepped toward the exit. He followed. Outside, the wind had returned. The desert stretched endlessly. But now it felt alive. Together they walked into it.